the surgeon, the nurse, and a third chair reserved for you. Welcome to the third chair.
Okay, hello. Thank you again for joining us on our podcast, the Third Chair Show. Unfortunately, the nurse, my sister, is not going to be available today. She's actually working on a big project. She writes books for children, and they're actually really cute. She focuses on things like education, Islam, good behavior, language, and she's doing some readings and some things for it. I might even, when I get a chance, try to put a link for her books on our site so you guys can check it out if you're interested. But she's not going to be available for us today. But we are very, very, very lucky. We have my cousin. We're going to call her the medical student. She's joining us actually on a call. She's in Egypt. She's a medical student studying there, and we're very lucky to have her. So welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, hi. Thank you for having me over. I'm really happy to be on the show.
Oh, well, we're very excited to have you. And I should add, my cousin, English is like her fourth language. She speaks so many languages, and I'm so impressed that and feel very lucky that I'm able to do this one in English with her. For a second there, I thought we were going to try to do it in Egyptian Arabic, but then I would have sounded terrible.
Oh, no, you don't sound terrible. Your act is perfect. But I'm really glad that we get to do this together. Well, the next year, upcoming year, is going to be, inshallah, my last year in medical school, which is very interesting and something that makes me very happy because it's been such a long way. And I would like to talk about what's med school is like in Egypt and my personal experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear that. And I should tell our listeners, medical school is a little different in Egypt than it is for us in the US. So for us, usually medical school is 4 years, and then it's followed by your specialty training and residency, which could be anywhere from 1 to 2 years to 7 years. Whereas in Egypt, medical
Yes,
school is actually
exactly.
6 years. And before you tell us about your experience, I want to know, why medicine? Why did you even decide to go into medicine?
Well, actually, I was in 10th grade. I was 15 years old, and I was like studying basic biology, and I felt this passion that I really want to do something out of what I'm studying right now. I felt like, wow, why not more? Why not achieve more? Why not have a beautiful future regarding this topic and regarding this subject? Why not? And I was like, so I studied really hard, and some teachers would tell me that I'm off track because I was studying my own way through my own notes. So I felt like, no, I'm gonna continue doing what I'm doing, and surprisingly, I got high grades, unlike what they told me. And this grades made me feel like, oh my god, I can actually achieve my dream and go to med school. But to be honest, during my way of studying biology, chemistry, physics, and math, I got redirected into wanting to go to science school because I felt like, oh my god, these sciences are so amazing. I want to take a more advanced level. And then I felt like I want to have, no, not just a lab or studying on my own forever. I felt like, no, I want human interactions. I want impact lives more. I want doctor-patient relationship where I can actually support patients and actually help them. So I felt like, no, I want to go for med school.
That's awesome. That's really admirable. And the reason why I'm actually really excited to talk to you about your experience through medical school is, our if I were to pick a title for today's podcast, it would be "Can People Really Change?" And that's really
Yeah.
interesting for me because our first couple of podcasts, we first talked about parenting. We talked about forgiveness,
Yeah.
and I just thought
I
it'd be
love these
interesting if we could.
episodes, by the way.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I wanted to see if we could tie that into, can people really change? Because, when you go from being a baby, basically, that's the way I view it. I mean, at least that's the way I viewed myself when I went to medical school. You go from being a
Yeah.
baby, you literally are transformed into a whole new person. You're not the same person you are from day one to the last day when you graduate medical school, and then when you do your residency training, you change again. And so I'm a strong believer that people can change, but I wanted to kind of get your perspective, and maybe tie it into interests that I know you've told me in the past about psychology. So I guess let's just start
Yeah.
with, to make it easy, let's just start with psychology. Why psychology? Why does it interest you?
Well, actually, I have grown up where psychology of the human being is strongly tied to religion, but I would believe that's not the concept I believe in right now. For example, if someone is feeling depressed or sad or anxious, they would say, or people would say, that they don't have enough faith. And that's something I feel like a big misconception, that no, human feelings does not mean that we don't have enough faith. They're human feelings that are made by God as well. And they're created within us. So I felt like, no, that's a misconception that needs to be fixed. And I felt like, no, major depressive disorder or anxiety and all of these stuff, no, they are things that we need to deal with on a more professional level and more awareness. Because if society does not tie to religion, it may like invalidate it or even make fun of it. So I felt like, no, we need to have more awareness and more education about such topic and about childhood traumas. How can they impact how you're transformed into an adult? For example, if a child grows in an environment where he's being told constantly that they're not good enough, they're going to grow up automatically feeling that they're not good enough. So I felt like, but it's up to us and up to this child to change these voices built into his head and say, no, I am good enough, and prove to himself that he can be someone, or even a great person, on a social level, on an ethical level, and on even work environments.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So you hit a lot of different, very important points of views. One of them is, unfortunately, and I don't know how it is in Egypt, but I can tell you in the U.S. and America that it's almost stigmatized. It's looked down upon to talk about things like mental health. But it's really interesting because it's very important. I read in really interesting statistics. The American Medical Association estimates that 75% of all medical problems that we treat in America are somehow related to mental health. So that includes things like high blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes. All these things are directly related to psychology, basically, and mental health. So I think it is something that's extremely important. You kind of broached the topic about things like affirmation, right? Telling yourself that you are good enough, which is a whole field of psychology, which we can get into here in a minute. That's really
Yeah.
important. And the last thing I think that kind of summarizes both those things together is you kind of hit on it. You essentially talked about neuroplasticity, right? Like if you keep telling somebody they're not good enough, they're not good enough, they're not good enough, the brain is going to be trained to think they're not good enough. You tell somebody they are good enough, they are good enough, they are good enough. Well, eventually the brain will actually create pathways to believe that it's good enough. And it's the same thing with exercise, right? When you first go to exercise, the first time, I can't. But if you tell yourself, oh yes, I can, and you keep pushing your body and you do once, twice, after a month, all of a sudden you develop a habit, right? And that's an example of
Yeah, that's very
neuroplasticity,
true.
right?
That's
Um,
very true.
so let me ask you this: do you think personalities then are fixed, or are they like what's your view on personality?
What
Like,
Well, I believe personally that definitely some personalities can change, definitely. But I believe that motivations are different from one person to another. Like, what's the nature of the change? For example, people can grow in a hard environment and become hard parents, for example, but their children may grow old and tell them, and when they're teenagers, for example, and tells them, you've been hard with me. So this parent, for example, decides to change for his kids after having tough time with them, like the children growing up with such parents. So that's a type of change. However, some other people, they may actually, from the change, we can choose the word develop. They can develop themselves from people who are constantly anxious, to people who can actually do some exercises and regulating their breath and actually achieving calmness and feeling calm on the inside whenever they feel the trigger. So change is different from a lot of perspective. Yes, of course, people can change, but it's about the choice. Some people decide not to change. It's a choice that we have to choose whether we want to change and what's the type of change. And is this change about us because we want to change, or because we have other people around us who we really want to positively impact their life? So it's about us mainly and about them. So I think change is a big word, you know?
You know, cousin, you are hitting some very deep points of views and things that I believe very strongly about. You use the word choice, and choice is
Yeah.
really a very powerful concept. People I don't think realize how powerful and how effective choice is. And I'm not trying to simplify it, right? I'm not trying to simplify it. It's not as simple as making a choice because I truly believe that it's wired in our DNA, in our own creation, that we understand how powerful choice is. A lot of us think, when we think of choice, like, oh, there's a difference between a big choice and a small choice. Like, do I want to be a doctor, or do I want to buy this house, or do I want to buy this car? We think those are big choices. But in reality, in my opinion, those are actually very small choices. Big
Yeah.
choices are sometimes the things that we consider to be small, and they can be very powerful. And I'll give you an example why I think choice is the most difficult thing a human being can do. If I asked you something simple like, hey, let's go out to dinner, where do you want to go eat? And all of a sudden, when you have to make that decision, when you have to make that choice, it becomes really hard because you realize that even though it's such a simple thing, right? That's something that most of us would consider to be a simple decision, a simple choice to make. But when you start thinking about the potential outcomes, all of a sudden it could be almost paralyzing. And and that makes me realize that, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but one of the things I've come to
No.
learn from my studies of psychology and psychiatry, but psychology over time, is the kind of person you decide to become, and the kind of person and the kind of life that you decide or choose to live really can shape your psychology. And I use the same thing even with my own patients when I treat them. When I first realized this when I was rounding on my patients in the hospital as a resident. So before I became
Yeah.
an attending on my own. I think you guys call it a
Yeah.
consultant over in Egypt. So before I started
Yeah.
practicing on my own, I did a kind of my own little project. I would go see my patients, and let's say on the ward we had like 20 brain surgeries that we did. And
Yeah.
when I went and said hello to them, I would I would either say hello, how are you, or sometimes I would say, hey, good morning, what a beautiful day we're having today. Even if the person
Wow.
was having a rough day, they're in pain, they just had a surgery or whatever, I chose, and I kind of did kind of like almost like a little difference, and I just wanted to see what kind of difference. So one was neutral and one was overly positive. And you know what's wild? I noticed that the people that I chose to say that positive statements toward every morning, even though it was a bad day outside, it was raining, it was this, it was that, whatever was going on, and they are in pain and they're hurting, just by saying that, when I would review their notes the next day, I would notice that these patients did better with physical therapy, they walked further,
Wow.
they ate better, more of them had bowel movements. And that's when I started to put kind of like almost like a connecting dot between them. So it's really interesting that you use the word choice, because I do believe that choice is
Yeah.
really important, and I really believe that that is the core to our personality and the way we develop. And before I get into it anymore, I just want to see if you have something you want to add to that.
Actually, I feel like what you said is such a beautiful, beautiful perspective. I've never thought about it before. How can this impact our patients if um, if we choose that we like have a positive day and say what a beautiful day. So we make the choice and they make the choice that wow, let's have a beautiful day. Let's look at it positively, and actually they develop positive physical symptoms as a result of that. I believe that's a very beautiful perspective. Never ever thought about it actually, because I always felt like I can support people like in my little circle as a med student, like my friends, my family, even my colleagues. How can I support them and give them the right voice of not what you're feeling is invalidated, or no, you're not praying enough, you don't have enough faith. No, I can actually tell them, oh, that's very valid. You have the right to feel what you feel. I completely understand. You know what? I went through the same thing, and I completely get what you're saying. So this was the little circle I've had out of my psychology studying and researching. So I've never ever thought that this can actually even possibly impact patients as well. So thank you so much for bringing that up. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, well, it goes even further than that. So, like, if you look at some of the kind of the legends in psychology, they when they sat down and they started looking at how the human brain functions and how the effect and the impact can be on their psyche and their physiological response. And now
Yeah.
with the advent of quantum mechanics and some of the new research we're seeing, it's actually wild. Like you're starting to see a connection that people can shape their own realities. Um, and even like for me, like faith is a very big part of my persona. I don't advertise it. I don't talk about it a lot, but I remember reading the first time I actually read, like, for instance, for me, the Quran, like from beginning to end. And I read a very important, very interesting and important verse in the Quran that says that basically, your Lord is what you think of them, basically. So
Yeah.
if you think your Lord is all forgiving, they're all forgiving. If you think they're all kind, they're all kind. If you think that they are a punisher, they're going to be a punisher. The reason why I bring that up is when I look at patients, let's say with neurosis, right? That's like the basis of psychology. When you get that split between the intellectual world and the worldly things. So, like you can imagine, I want this house, I want this boat, I want this thing. And then there's the reality that you're having trouble attaining it, right? You're having trouble getting it.
Yeah.
And the neurosis starts to develop when people start to kind of widen that gap and widen that disconnect. And then you start to get like an abnormal issue, right? That's when all of a sudden stress turns into anxiety. And I think you and I talked about this before. What's the difference between
Yeah.
stress and anxiety? They're two different. One is something that's actually happening to you right then and there. And the other one is something where it's not physically happening to you, but your brain can't tell the difference, right? Your brain, as far as it can
Right.
tell, it's still a stressful situation. And I think part of growing up and part of maturing is starting to see, hey, how can I deal with that? Um, and the way I learned to deal with it is I didn't talk to people that were my age. I went to the old people, right? The people that had the gray in their hair and in their beards and that seemed to be happy. And I just wanted to see, okay, well, how did they do it? And that's kind of how I slowly started to extrapolate, trying to find that balance between faith, between the world, and between, medicine and science. And then slowly over time, I realized, they actually are all connected. Um, um, there's something really interesting about Egyptian culture, and maybe you can help expand on this. So I saw a video once on Instagram. It cracked me up
Yeah.
because I don't think the girl that did the video realized how deep she was. Okay, there's a very
Okay.
dangerous word in English vocabulary. It's should, right? Should, should.
Yeah.
Should have
Yeah.
I done this? Should have I done that? Um, and it's really interesting because if you think of how the brain is wired, our brain is not wired to be happy, right? Our brain is wired to survive. If you look at it from a purely
Mhm.
scientific way, anxiety is a way to keep us from dying. So it's a way to survive because it makes us think of dangers so we can avoid dangers. So when we start emphasizing on this should, it's weird how that overtakes happiness and we can direct it. So the video that I watched, this lady was singing a song and she was like, I hate the word, oh man, now I'm blanking on it. Uh, uh, ملحقتش or something like that or لازم ألحق أعمل حاجة. So she was like, لازم تلحق تنام عشان تلحق تصحى عشان تلحق تذاكر عشان تلحق تشتغل عشان تلحق تشتري عشان تلحق. And it was funny, like she was kind of making a joke about it, but I don't think she
Yeah.
realized she was hitting at one of the bases of neurosis of psychology. And it's not
Yeah.
just Egyptian culture, by the way. Like I see it in the US as well. But it'd be interesting to see how you feel that plays a role in your society and what you've experienced.
Well, actually, I feel like the anxiety can like it varies from one person to another. Some people choose to be like very very careless so that they don't feel anxiety. because so they don't do their tasks. I've seen such examples, and I've seen people actually taking very strong medication for their anxiety in order not to let their anxiety stop them from achieving more. So these are two. I know that these are two extreme examples, two different extremes. But as like my personal point of view, I've struggled with anxiety when I was in high school because I wanted to get high grades. I wanted to do my best, and I didn't develop anxiety as much as about constant stress. Like you said, the difference between anxiety and everyday stress. So I've developed like everyday stress. I would be stressed out and scared not to finish my homework, like you said, and to arrive late at the lecture. And even my best friend told me a few days ago that before she knew me, girls at our school, they would call me the girl who runs from one lecture to another because I was really scared to miss the first word the professor would say. So it was really stressful, but when I went to med school, it even got worse. I felt like the curriculum was a lot, and
I could
it was
definitely relate to that.
biochemistry. Yeah. You're the neurosurgeon. You've been through much more than I did because you're in a very advanced stage, mashallah.
Oh, well, I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I mean, I could definitely understand the stress. I remember the first day of medical school, the professor came up, the very first day, he put a fire hydrant, and it was a drawing of a person putting his mouth over the fire hydrant, and he said, medical school is like trying to drink out of the fire hydrant, basically, with the water coming out so fast. So I completely understand what you mean by it's stressful.
My best friend once told me that a doctor told her that being in med school is like having a cactus on a couch. You're not allowed you're not allowed to rest. And I'm like, what? That's very hard. Like, that's very, very hard. I don't think it should be like that. This doctor is really, really giving a very tough image. So this is why I say sometimes it's subjective. Your perspective on med school, it's very subjective, and at the same time, there are things that you feel like, oh my god, the curriculum is a lot. I think that's subjective. So, but then med school actually started changing, and I started having passion. Like, my passion just went way up. I felt really happy when I started starting clinical and history taking and examination and dealing with patients and seeing patients with different stories and different diagnoses. I felt like, wow, oh my god, wow, that's really different. I don't have to study books and books and books to achieve high grades and to know what needs to be known to be a good doctor. It's not just about that. It's about interactions and people's different situations, and children different situations in pediatrics, actually, and babies in neonatology. So I felt like, wow, that's like really, really beautiful. I felt like I'm in the right place, that God gave me such a beautiful place to be in and such a beautiful job to continue my life in. I felt like it's just me, my medicine, the people I love. That's it. What more do I want? Sometimes I feel like I don't know how did I get into med school. I just did my best and never thinking that my best would be enough. I just did it. And I felt like, oh my God, God is so giving. He's so giving. He gives people way too much than they deserve. And he gives people a lot. And I keep thanking God whenever I remember and I feel like, oh my God, I'm blessed to be a med student. I'm blessed that I have the chance that one day I'll be a doctor helping patients out. So that's my perspective. I feel like anxiety can go away when passion starts to kick in,
Well, not just passion, also being grateful is really important, right? Because it goes back to that word you talked about, choose. You can choose to be grateful, or you can choose not to be grateful. One of the cognitive behavioral therapies and psychotherapies you use on patients that have really severe depression is you try to teach them carefully, how do you choose to be grateful, and it's really important because, again, that's such a powerful concept, right? Because some people play the victim card, which we talked about in some of our previous episodes, and there's three really powerful words in the English language. One is blame. It's easy to blame others, But don't forget, it's just as easy as it is for you to blame someone. Someone else can blame you for something. Just like somebody X caused you stress, maybe you caused somebody else Y stress, and you don't even realize it. The other one that's scary
Yeah.
is deserved. That feeling that, well, this didn't happen to me because of that person, and I deserved it. That's a dangerous concept, and it's a very powerful word that you have to be careful about. And the last one is entitlement, right? That sensation
Yeah.
of I'm entitled this, like this should be mine. And again, you have to be careful. These are the words that are that can really mess with your psyche and your happiness. And I think,
Yeah.
at least for me, like I've always dealt a very stressful, anxious life, and whether it was as a result of upbringing experiences, but the day that I finally was able to take a deep breath and realize that, wait a minute, what am I doing? Was the day I made a very important decision. It was a decision to just choose to be truthful on everything. It didn't matter, small, big, and choosing to be grateful. And not just grateful on the things that are outside, not just grateful, oh, I have a house, or I have a car, I have this, but just really simple things like, you know what, I'm grateful that I was able to wake up today. I'm grateful that I was able to call my friend today. Hey, I'm grateful that I was able to, like you said, help your colleague or whoever. These are the small things that you are in control of, because sometimes things like risk you're not always in control of, right? Whether money, whatever, relationships. But choose to be grateful about the things you are in control of and the things you were able to do. And it's crazy, if you do that, you may not notice a difference the first day, you may not notice a difference by 15 days, by a month, but I promise you, if you keep it up, you are going to notice such an unbelievable difference. And you'll be tested. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? You will be tested along the way. Um,
Yeah.
but I didn't mean to cut you off, but those are very important
And
concepts
also,
that you're playing with. And I don't know if you realize that or not, but these are things that took me like 20, 30 years to realize. So it's wonderful to see that you're figuring it out.
mhm,
And the last thing is, I wanted to add just something about medical school and anything in general. Like, if I could do it all over again, or if I was teaching, year one medical students when they came in, I think the very first thing I would teach them, instead of just putting a drawing of like the fire hydrant or the example of the cactus, that you're sitting on, I would actually do something.
yeah.
This is what I believe I would do. I would actually first teach the kids something very important, that, you know what, the body has an engine, just like a car has an engine. And that engine that causes you to keep going and keep moving is called the autonomic nervous system, right? It's what causes that fight and flight response, and
Exactly.
causes you to always keep going, right? I'm scared of getting a bad grade. I'm scared of my boss. I'm scared of the deadline. I'm scared of this test. This, I have to turn this in. I have to go here. I have to go there. And what people don't realize is, as that engine keeps firing, it causes your body to release more stress hormones, right? That's why your body is in a fight or flight response. And what
Yeah.
happens is people get sick. People get sick from high blood pressure, diabetes, lack of sleep. Some people enter major depression, and what they forget, and what I wish they would teach you is, just like a car has an accelerator, it also has a brake. And the human
Yeah.
body also has a brake system. That's the vagus nerve, right? That's what causes you to
Mhm.
have rest and digest. And you have an
Yeah.
ability to control that. And I wish I would teach that to people. And I think it would help them as they're going through a difficult phase, something like whether it's medical school or real world things. And there are ways to deal with it. And there's ways to activate it and to change your state of mind, because your state of mind equals your state of your body.
Yeah.
If you
That's so
can,
true.
yeah, if you can enter that peaceful, your body, I promise you, will be peaceful and handle stress a lot better than when it's always stress and that autonomic nervous system is just kicking in. And the ways I think I would teach people, and if anybody in the audience is listening, first one is, teach yourself to breathe. It's amazing that diaphragm is such a powerful muscle, and if you train yourself to breathe and take a break and forget the world, even if it's just 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day, whatever way you choose to do it, regardless. Like for faith, I like to wake up first thing in the morning. I do not look at my phone. I don't care who texted me. I don't care who emailed me. You know what? If they emailed me at midnight, it sat there for 6 hours. The first thing I do is after I wash up and I clean up, I just sit there for a minute, close my eyes, take a deep breath, calm down. I pray my morning prayer, and then I sit there and I sit quietly for another 5 minutes. And I'll tell you, doing that, it's unbelievable the serenity and the calmness that you feel from it. Um, which then transitions to the second thing, which is mind. That will eventually cause your mind to enter that state of calmness and peace. And the other one is words. Being careful what words I use. Unfortunately, we're trained to always have these wild words in our heads, right? Of thinking negative about ourselves, or thinking negative about the world, or thinking negative. You have to choose not to use those words, or choose to use those positive words. And initially, you don't think it's going to make a difference, but I promise you, over time, it will make a difference. And now there's medical evidence that shows that it does make a huge difference. And when we start doing quantum medicine, which I don't know if they've taught you guys any of this in medical school yet or not, but there's new literature now that's showing that there's going to be this new field called quantum medicine that plays on these things, and we're now seeing that, oh my God, you can literally shape your reality uh, with this approach. It's really mind-boggling. And I can tell you anecdotally from my own personal experience how that's changed my life. And I can tell you with my patients, when I don't necessarily give them a lecture about it, but I just teach them these exercises and I ask them to please do it. And what I've noticed is these people do better with pain control before and after surgery, and sometimes they can avoid surgery. I've noticed that they are able to function better in society. They develop better relationships because there's such important things that really help you grow.
Wow, that's such a beautiful perspective. Like, again, I've never really thought that this can really be better with patients at pain control or before or after surgery or even avoid surgery. I've never actually thought it can have such an impact. That's such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful perspective. Like, I've never thought about it. And you saying about entitlement and deserve and all of these beautiful concepts that we should avoid all of these words. That's a beautiful concept. And I feel like all of these never crossed my mind because I felt like maybe the kind of trouble I suffered from was different, like stress and anxiety, and feeling that I'm, like you said, flight or fight mode. So I felt like, no, I need to do better. I have to do better. No matter what I do, I'm not good enough. I felt like, no, by time I felt like, no. Even in med school, I would reach a level of stress that I have to do about 500 pages in 24 hours. So that was a level of stress. I was like, oh, that's way too much. But then I've learned to do my best, and that's it. And actually, this exam, I felt like I'm gonna do my best, and I'm gonna study hard, and I'm gonna do my best regarding these hours. But I need to get rest as well. I have to take a break. And due to my anxiety, I couldn't sleep, but I got myself 3 hours in bed, trying to clear my head, like you said, and take a deep breath and relax in the dark. And it actually worked out fine because it made me even do more and achieve more in the upcoming hours after that. And it made me actually 4 out of the 5 doctors who have examined me orally told me, bravo, like, you're doing great. And I was like, wow. On the other hand, exams, when I was really, really, really stressed out and anxiety was taking over, I couldn't remember the stuff I studied because I didn't take a deep breath. I did not calm down. I did not give my body and my mind a break. So what you're saying is really, really, really amazing, and I've actually experienced something like that, but I've never really put them into words like you did, So you highlighting that made me, oh my God, I've been through that. So wow,
It
you're
really,
very, very right.
well, I appreciate that. It's important, and I really wish there was more emphasis on this. And maybe we're biased because being both physicians, we're keep saying medical school, but I really truly believe, and from clinical experience, that this is applicable in all aspects of life, regardless of your specialty, regardless of what kind of work that you do. And I'm sure you guys have noticed on my last podcast, but anybody that knows me knows that I'm really big on sayings. Like I love sayings because they're sayings and expressions are. I feel like it's society's way of distilling all the knowledge that we have into a few words. And when you really break it down, you start to realize, huh, you know what? It makes sense. Just like what you just said. You did better when you were less anxious as opposed to when you were more anxious, and when you were able to take that break and give a chance for that vagus nerve to kick in, whether that means taking a nap, sleeping, breathing, praying, meditating, whatever it is that you need to do. In America, like we have an older expression is making a mountain out of a molehill, which means like taking a small issue and turning it into a big one. Or another one is people always say, "What if something goes wrong? What if this happens?" But instead, the new way is to say, what if everything works out? What if everything actually ends up the way it is? Instead of focusing on the negative, let's focus on the positive. Or there's an old Southern expression where they'll say, worrying is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. Like a rocking chair when you're sitting on it, you can go back and forth, and I'm sure there's a lot of
That's such a beautiful thing. Like that's very accurate.
yeah, it really is. And there's a lot of famous like Egyptian ones too. I'm having trouble remembering them right now, but like one of like my favorite one, which kind of sums up culture. In Egypt, I've heard people say that. Oh my goodness, I'm trying to remember how it goes, but basically they'll say like آه، آه، المصري دايما بيفكر في اي حاجة ممكن تحصل، وبيفكر فيها ده ما بتحصل، بعد ما بتحصل ولما حصلتش هيفكر ليه ما حصلتش. Like you'll think about something, you worry about it before it happens, after it happens, and even if it doesn't happen, you worry why it didn't happen. And
yeah,
and
very true.
and it's the same thing. Like in American culture, Egyptian culture, it's a similar concept. Like we see it all the time. Like it happens all the time. And you always hear like all the fun little Egyptian expressions that don't necessarily give you an answer, but there's a lot of truth to them. Like you'll say bukra bithel, like it'll work itself out. If you're patient, right, and you just wait. Or what's that other silly one? Uh, اللي يخاف من العفريت يطلع له, or something like that. Like like
Yeah.
like whoever's scared of a ghost, it'll eventually show up for him. Like
Yeah.
like some again, it goes back to that we can keep thinking about something and we can shape our own reality, and that's why it's scary, and that's why it's so important to have those positive affirmations and the way we think and the way we act, and it really does work. And
Yeah,
and then
it's very true.
وبعدين اعمل اللي عليك والباقي على الله. Like do your part and leave the rest to God. And it's
Yeah.
wild how it work out. So like although a lot of these things seem really simple, when you really dissect them and when you start to use your scientific knowledge and you start to overlay, you start to realize, oh my God, this actually makes sense. Like it actually does make sense. But it's not as simple as, like you said it in the beginning of our episode, right? People will say, oh, forget it. Oh, you don't have enough faith or this and that. But no, it's not about that. There's nothing wrong with trying to understand. And you're right. It's a pet peeve of mine. I do not like it when people say things like that because that's not right. Like, and even in our faith, it's in the Quran, if you read it, it says so many places, أَفَلَا تَعْقُلُونَ. Like the Quran tells you, think, use your brain. There's nothing wrong with using your brain. There's nothing wrong with trying to understand things and trying to understand science. And this is why, like, one of the biggest hasanat, the biggest good deeds you can get in your life is knowledge, because it's one of the three things that persist even after we die. If you have good knowledge that you passed on and help somebody, you'll still keep getting good deeds for it. So there's nothing wrong with trying to understand these good deeds, and that's one of the most beautiful things about, regardless if you go into medicine or you become an engineer or you become a nurse or you become an accountant or a tax person or a taxi driver. It doesn't matter, as long as you try to learn and you try to make good out of it, and hopefully keep those lessons ongoing.
Yeah,
I don't
you're
know.
very, very right.
I feel like I maybe got off topic a little bit. I'm sorry, but as you can tell, I feel a little bit strongly about these things.
Actually, what you have said is very, very, very deep and very, very, very true. like when you said "اعمل اللي عليك سيبها على ربنا," do your best and leave the rest to God. That's very, very, very calming to the soul. When people are anxious, for example, about an exam, they did their best and they feel like they're scared of the grade. No, this anxiety, it can be calmed down by this strong saying, because you're gonna feel this calmness that God is here. He is here and he is gonna take care of your efforts. You don't have to be scared anymore. There is this part, it's up to you, but there is this other part that you have to leave to God. And this is a part where we have to let go of the control, that we can control everything, or that we're in a world that we can control things by doing our best, and then everything is gonna work out just fine. No, we can't control everything. Yeah, we can do our best, but there is this part called tawfiq rabbina, like God helping you out and giving you a lot more than you deserve. We can't really let like being busy with life and work make us forget God's role in making things work in our lives, and even giving us way more than our efforts, and giving us way more than we deserve, because I feel like going to work, having like anxiety, stress, returning back to hard from work, we remember God less. And I feel like, no, we need to remember God more and more and more. And like you said, being grateful for the small things. I wake up today, my body works for me. I'm healthy. And even though I know that some listeners are listening to us right now and they may suffer from a psychological disease or a physical disease, they shouldn't be sad, because this is the part where patience is tested. And I feel like, from my own personal experience, when you go through something really hard and God tests your patience, and you do nothing but thank God and be patient through all of the hard parts of it, because life can get really, really, really hard where people are in a bad state physically or mentally. God rewards you more than you think when you just get out of there. And I feel like this is a part that I feel like society, from my own personal experience, if someone is in a bad state and not doing, for example, they can't get the best grades and they can't really be on track, they would actually, oh, he's a loser, she's a loser. They wouldn't understand that a person is in a bad state or not doing great because they don't know. They would choose to judge. But we should actually think about, no, if someone is in a bad state, they should receive help and psychological support and asking, are you okay? Is there something I can do? That's a different perspective to look at it. This is why I feel like empathy and sympathy should be more involved, in society. And
Absolutely.
actually,
And that's something your generation, I think, is doing better than my generation. And I'm hoping that over time it'll continue to be this way. You guys realize that it is important to have that empathy, and also to it takes a group, right? It takes a village to make things work. And I love how you worded that gratefulness. I'm telling you, this is one of the basis of psychotherapy, is teaching people that simple gratefulness, and even in the tiny little things that you can control, no matter how small it is. I was able to walk, to the door, and if you're ill, I was able to call this person, or at least I was able to, whatever it is, that thing you're happy, it doesn't matter how small it is. If you slowly keep adding them, it's amazing how they do. And it reminds me of this hadith. I don't remember the whole hadith, but it's like, it says, عجبا الأمر المؤمن إن كل أمر له خير. Like, it doesn't matter. If it's something good, alhamdulillah. If something bad, alhamdulillah. Because you don't know what has khair in it. You don't know what has good in it. And just that gentle being grateful, it's wild how it changes your outlook in life, and I promise you, over time you get better and you get stronger, which is so important. It really is.
yeah, you're very, very, very right. I feel like that maybe this person who goes through a hard time, if the society around them actually tries to say, "Are you okay?" I feel like this person will be doing a lot better rather than hearing voices like, "Oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you rarely study. Oh, no, I think you're just not doing great because you don't try enough." So even though they might be trying their best at home, but you just don't see it. So I feel like no, we should include more kindness in our thoughts and in our deeds.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
But
feel like
also
that's
at the
very
same token,
important.
and I completely agree with you. At the same token, I want to make sure whoever's on the receiving end, right, the person that feels like they are being perceived in such way, why it's important for them to take a step back, breathe, again, mind, remember the state of mind is important, and reminding that the words that you choose about yourself or what you think others think of you, it change those words. Literally, just drop them out of your vocabulary, and you will. I'm telling you, when you make that choice, you will be blown away on how powerful it is. Like imagine if I told you pick any random word. That doesn't matter. Give me any word. Any word.
Happiness.
Uh, well, I didn't want to use the word that. Okay, except for the happiness. Any word except for happiness.
Okay.
Huh?
Sadness.
Okay, sadness. Sure. I was hoping you'd say something like car or blue or red or something like that.
Sadness.
That's
We're
okay.
talking about
But
emotions. So.
imagine if I told you you could never use the word sadness again for the rest of your life. Ever again. Or even if you want to use the word happiness. Imagine if I told you you could never use the word happiness again for the rest of your life. Imagine the effect that could have on you. And it's just a word. Imagine if I told you you could never use the
And
word happiness. Imagine if I told you you could never use the word blue again for the rest of your life. Imagine the effect that it would have on you. Words have a huge effect on you. So be careful
you're
which
very right.
words you use, right? Um,
You're very right.
and again, remember, our brains are wired for survival, not necessarily happiness. And our brains want to express themselves one way or another, right? So, like, the cavemen used to write on cave walls. Now we've become fancy. We write on Instagram or whatever you like to use for your social
Yeah.
media. So like just be careful about that. Which brings me back to our original statement, which was, can people really change? So let me hear. So what do you think now that we've talked about all these things? What are your thoughts? Do you believe people can really change?
Well, I believe definitely. Yes, definitely people can change. They can change when they feel like they need to. They can change when they choose to. They can change when they feel like when they. It's very important. This person actually, I feel like you can blame others, but it's very hard to say I'm wrong. So if a person reaches this stage and says, "Oh, I'm wrong," which is very hard, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like yeah, that's a stage when a person can actually develop and change. But on the other hand, not all people change because some people they rarely think that they're wrong. So they would be always convinced that they're right and they would never develop. And on the other hand, change can actually be like we can look at it from another perspective that we change from a space to another through our experiences and through our traumas. It changes us. But I can give you an example. Like, for example, a kid was, for example, bullied at school. They can actually have two choices, whether to become a bully or never, ever, ever to laugh about the person in front of him who was being bullied again because people used to laugh at him and make him the joke or the victim and think it's funny. That's a choice and that's a change. So what do you choose to be? That's a change. So change is a big word that we can look at it from a lot of perspectives, but these are the perspectives that I know.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have put it better than you did. I definitely agree. I do believe people can change. I can tell you, I myself have been through multiple changes, and you keep growing as an individual. If you're sad, if you're depressed, if you're unhappy about something, there are ways, and from a scientific perspective, remember, there's that autonomic nervous system that keeps you going. but you also have a break.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's important to use that break to slow yourself down. And I promise you,
Exactly.
you'll do better. You can definitely change if you make that choice. And remember, words are powerful. Avoid blame, avoid the I deserve this, avoid that feeling of entitlement. Choose to be truthful, and I promise you, you'll be tested. I mean, for my faith, I could tell you when people are truthful, they will tell you life is gets sometimes a little harder, right? And
Yeah.
it's okay. That's part of life. I mean, you will be tested. It tells us that in the Quran, we will be tested, and that's life.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
one is be careful about the should I do this, should I do that, should have done this, should have done that. And remember, your brain is not wired for happiness; it's wired for survival, and you have a way you can hijack that now that we understand that. Remember to breathe, mind, word. So your state of mind is important, and do it daily. If you're a man that, or woman that likes to pray, I promise you, you will get benefit from it. Force yourself to have that moment of quietness, and over time, you will definitely hopefully grow as an individual, and avoid being that victim, which we talked about in our first couple of podcasts, and hopefully
Yeah.
we'll jump more and more into this into our next podcast. Uh, I will say this was wonderful. I really, really appreciate you taking the
Thank
time out of
you.
your busy schedule to be with us on the third chair conversation. Um,
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for
uh,
having me over.
and hopefully we can have you over again another time. And um,
Inshallah.
hopefully you have a wonderful time, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Me too.